called into a meeting with senior leaders. They're presenting ideas on the topic du jour, and they ask the team for their thoughts. The room goes silent. Bob, who's normally outgoing, is sitting next to you, squirming in his seat. Across the table from you is the typically opinionated Jane, and instead of offering her thoughts, she's attempting to purposely scour her notepad for something, anything, to avoid making eye contact with the boss. Simultaneously around the room, knowing glances and skeptical expressions are being traded as everyone attempts to hold their tongue. Not because they don't have thoughts, your team has plenty of those, or perspectives to share. Lord knows they have those as well. But rather, no one wants to become the sacrificial lamb by being the first to speak. Today, we're discussing psychological safety, the crucial role it plays in empowering high-performing teams, and how the lack of it or the presence of it impacts your team, and how you can build it, and how you may be killing it, either intentionally or unintentionally.
Right here on Imperfect, Better After Broken. I'm Susan Hendrich.
And I'm Jeff Servello.
And we're here to talk about...
Right there.
We're here to talk about the cracks, the scars, and the stories that make us stronger, right here on Imperfect, Better After Broken, on Sandcastle Radio, America's hottest online variety and music station. Psychological safety, Jeff, it's really a hot topic right now. And I think it's gone beyond the nice to have concept. You know, Dr. Amy Edmondson, a Harvard professor, the key voice in psychological safety, has proven the financial benefits, the social benefits, the community, but there's so many reasons for psychological safety. But Bob, and that scenario you just read to us, that is real life, isn't it?
For so long, I thought this was like a foo-foo topic that little snowflakes worried about so that their precious little snowflake wouldn't melt, and psychological safety, suck it up, buttercup, right? Like, you realize the scene that we just talked about, the scene that I said, that's real. We've been there. Once I started recognizing that's what a vacuum of psychological safety felt like, and then realizing, hey, maybe this is real. Maybe this isn't foo-foo topic for people who are overly sensitive. This is a real killer of productivity and a real killer of engagement and satisfaction. And if you leave it unaddressed, as a leader, you're going to lose your ability to be impactful, and you're going to drive your teammates to do the one thing you hopefully don't want them to do, and that's go find a job elsewhere.
True word you speak. Think about every job you've ever had that you loved, where you felt seen, heard, and valued. If you're lucky, you know, we have a couple of those in our lifetime where we really just feel on. Guaranteed there's some level of psychological safety. We should probably define what that is.
Me, I think of psychological safety is that feeling or thought that you can share your opinions and ideas freely without worrying about how you're going to be treated or responded to, or that it's going to make you a pariah at work or really damaging your brand.
Being able to be yourself. And that is not a license to run amok and cause problems and just blurt things out to create a mess in the boardroom, so to speak. Ability to tell and speak the truth as you see it without fear of reprisal. Think about the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Emperor's New Clothes. It's a situation where everybody sees the truth, nobody says the truth, and the social cost feels so high that it's just like an executive meeting, not just a children's story where leaders say they want innovation. Tell me what you're thinking. Give me your feedback. Help me be better. But innovation requires disagreement, and disagreement requires risk, and risk requires safety. So that's why nobody told the emperor, about what was really going on. You can't ask for bold thinking from people who are living in self-protection mode.
What a great way to frame that.
I think we're in trouble too as a society if we don't figure out how to create psychological safety. It's not a one and done acquisition skill, by the way. They say, just like restaurants, it takes a lifetime to build and a moment or a glance to destroy. Thankfully, due to kintsugi, we can repair psychological safety, but I think it requires intentionality and congruence. People don't listen as much to what you say as they do observe what you do and how you do it. Do you have a story about psychological safety for yourself?
So many stories of when I've seen it destroyed. When I worked for people who were either ill-tempered, strong-willed, or not confident enough to have their thoughts and opinions challenged. Somewhere along the lines, they read that they should get the team's opinions, and as soon as the team would offer opinions, instead of exploring or considering, they would do one of two things. It would be, hey, Susan, what do you think? Should we have Brussels sprouts or green beans? And if you said green beans, that person would immediately go into, right, we're doing Brussels sprouts, and not like a thoughtful pause and think about it. It would be without a missing of a beat. As soon as you finished your sentence, hey, that's a great point. This is what we're going to do. So it was kind of very performative. We're having this meeting because you read in a textbook somewhere that good leaders have meetings, but your mind was already made up. That was one way in which it was like, why am I here if you already have the decision? So that undercut psychological safety. Or the leader who you would bring them the answers or the data they were looking for, and because it didn't fit the narrative they were trying to create, they were dismissive and belittling of the work, the product, the individual who brought the data, and not the data itself. Then people were just like, whatever, man, dig your hole.
You just named one of the consequences of not having psychological safety. It wasn't that long ago in an organization where I was partnering with someone who had been there for many years, and he was a loyal employee, cared deeply about the work and about the people that we served. I watched him be dressed down in a meeting by a senior leader who not only dismissed his idea, but kind of dismissed him as a person and almost was laughing at him. I can pinpoint the moment that his disengagement began. After that, he still worked hard. He still showed up on time. He still did the doing, but the flame of his spirit seemed to go out. About a month later, I said, hey, are you doing okay? I'm concerned that you lost your spark a little bit. He started talking about, in all my years, I've never been spoken to like that. How do you recover from a humiliation? And I said, well, what keeps you here? What kept you from walking out the door that day and not coming back? And he said, I don't know, honestly. I guess it's fear of leaving. Where am I going to go? Fear of losing everything I've built at this organization, and also fear of letting him win, letting that leader win with their actions. But then he got really morose in his tone, and he said, so all this stuff that I've been doing, all these things that I've worked on, for what? Why bother? If that is going to be the response. When you said, why am I even doing this? It really brought me back to that moment where he had gone into this existential crisis. For what? Why am I even trying? And it's heartbreaking when you see a high performer going into that state of disconnect and helplessness.
It's relatable, unfortunately. I think many of us can relate. It's one thing to be a part of a meeting where a leader is maybe dismissive because they're having a bad day. But I don't think that's what we're talking about necessarily. We're talking about the people who have systematically and systemically created conditions. I don't want to call them hostile, but they're definitely not fertile. They're definitely not welcoming, where you may be seen. I don't know if I want you to be heard. You walk away definitely not feeling valued. And I think those are the moments that we want to talk about today and urge our leaders to think about how you show up and the way you open the table for psychologically safe conversations, where again, you can share your ideas and opinions without fear of damaging your reputation. Susan, the question I really want to ask is, you've led in multiple organizations. If you had to put a percentage on it, what percentages of organizations are getting this wrong?
Is anybody getting it right fully, truly?
Ooh, okay.
And I hate to say that because I am a chronic optimist, but I do see post-COVID phenomenon that I'm noticing, major disconnect between intent and impact for many leaders. Liz Wiseman wrote a book called Multipliers. And if you haven't read it, dear listener out there, I urge you to get to Amazon or your Barnes & Noble right now, Multipliers. The concept of multipliers is we all in leadership, nobody wakes up and says, let me be a crappy leader today. Everybody wants to do a good job. And we want the most positive environment that we can and to help people succeed. The problem is we have what Liz Wiseman coins as accidental diminishers, things that we think are going to have a positive impact that actually have the opposite. I'll tell you my 3 accidental diminishers, the 3 things that I do. If you've worked with me, you know that I do this, where I think I'm helping, but I'm actually harming. One of them is called always on. The person who thinks that they're being helpful by answering texts at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, who is go, go, go. And after a really long and difficult day, instead of saying, okay, everybody, let's get out of here and go take a beat, they just pour more in. And I have high energy and that's great. But when I don't step out of the ring, I am sending a message to everyone else. You also can't step out of the ring. And so psychological safety is diminished. The second accidental diminisher that I display is called the perfectionist. It's great to put out a great product, but does it have to be absolutely perfect? 80% right, 100% fast. And the perfectionist in me just cringes at the thought of that. But otherwise, you never get anything done. So I don't want people to be afraid to come to me with an idea because they know I'm going to pull out my red pen thinking I'm being helpful with my unsolicited editing advice. The last one, this is probably my most egregious. And I'm supposed to be an expert in psychological safety, but I do all 3 of these. The last one that I do is called idea fountain. So somebody brings up an idea and I have to have 17 other ideas on top of that because I'm being helpful to add to the mix. Yeah. And so that one idea that this person brought gets drowned out. Of course, it's not on purpose. Focusing on building psychological safety every day, all day. And I have 3 of those top 10 accidental diminishers. Imagine folks who are new to leadership or who are feeling overwhelmed or who don't have a developed skill set. My answer to your question, Jeff, every organization struggles to create, maintain, repair psychological safety. So I'd say 100% are struggling. How about yourself?
I was going to think 60-40, but as I heard you explain 100%, yeah, I could see that. And I'm mulling over your use of the word organization. I'm processing, I guess, is this an organizational issue or is this an individual that gets pinned on the organization because of where it happens? Or is this one bad apple and the bunch is spoiled? This leader does it, so now I do it because it's become accepted or emulated or a part of the accepted culture of the organization.
Your culture is defined by the most toxic behavior you tolerate. The one bad apple theory of, well, I'm not behaving that way, but by not putting a stop to a toxic behavior or something inappropriate, I'm tacitly endorsing that that's okay. Well, I'm helpless to do anything about it. No, rise up and do something constructive. Maybe you don't go straight to HR or shout out in the middle of a meeting, and that's certainly not an effective way to deal every time. If we're defined by the most toxic behavior we tolerate, then your point about the contagion that a lack of psychological safety can cause is real. And one more thing that goes with it, real consequences. In healthcare, silence can hurt patients. In aviation, silence can crash planes. In relationships, silence can create resentment that leads to a breakup. And in leadership, to your point earlier about retention and people leaving, silence slowly erodes individuals from organizations and organizations from reality.
Such a great point. And I want to take this opportunity to invite the listener, think for a couple seconds, right? Susan graciously shared with us her traits that may not have the desired effect that she's hoping for. What are yours? When was the last time you took an inventory of, hey, maybe that's not the thing that I want to be doing, or maybe that's not having the effect? For me, it's sarcasm. When I get stressed, sarcasm is my defense mechanism. I have a plaque somebody gave me one time that says sarcasm. I put it on everything, right? And And so it's one of those things that, right? Like it's like my favorite barbecue rub or something, right? It's just everywhere. Unintended consequences. For me, it's a way to release stress and feel pithy and witty. But for the people who may be on the receiving end, I got to be honest, I probably should have spent more time thinking about those impacts on how's that being received. Some folks probably thought it was great. They probably weren't the ones to whom the sarcasm was aimed at, or they appreciated gallows humor. That's probably my other one. The sarcasm and the gallows humor for me are coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I love your invitation. I would love to hear in a comment, where have you had moments of lessons learned where you would go back and do things differently? I can't imagine there's a leader out there who doesn't have some form of accidental diminisher where they look back and they realize my optimism actually went too far, or my pace setting was too fast and people didn't feel like they could keep up, so they didn't even try. Or being a rescuer who's always going to swoop in and fix the situation instead of empowering people. We do these things, and that is why culture of psychological safety is so hard to create and maintain, because each of us is using our unique personal style, our unique beliefs about the world, our unique experience about what it means to be a good leader. And sometimes those ideas intersect with each other in a way that causes a schism. Then we end up having employees feeling fearful. We are in constant scanning mode for threats. It's part of our DNA. Any given moment, even right now, wherever you are, if you're in a car, if you're sitting in a doctor's office waiting, you are subconsciously scanning for threats, not just to your physical safety, but to your sense of status, your sense of certainty, your autonomy, your relatedness, or fairness. SCARF. David Rock talks about SCARF threats. We are constantly scanning for threats to those, and our egos, led chiefly by our amygdala, don't allow us to tolerate threats without some sort of reaction. And that's why we're all running around as activated stress balls sometimes, that it just takes one wrong look that gets people into a not so great spot.
But I think we lose sight of the fact that psychological safety, to your point, it's like a running ticker. It is, you are always either building from it or taking from it. It is, you are the sum total of your interactions with people. And it may not be as dramatic as in the meeting where someone shoots your idea down or makes you feel like your contribution doesn't matter. It might be in the abrupt comment in the parking lot. It might be your perception of how someone saw you at the company Christmas party or failed to interact with you. It's all these little micro signals, whether they're micro affirmations or micro aggressions, that constantly build into this. I don't know if you took physics in high school, but when I did, you had to do like the matchstick bridge. And if you assembled the matchsticks appropriately, you built a very strong and robust bridge. If you didn't, it didn't hold up very long or under much weight and under much pressure. That's a lot of what we need to think about in psychological safety is, yes, it's in the meetings. Yes, it's in the one-on-ones. But it's also like when you walk by the person in the hallway and you may be engrossed in your thing and they're like, hey, Jeff, and you don't bother looking up. To your point about threat scanning, now that person who was on the receiving end of that interaction is making a value judgment on your perception of them and what you perceive as their worth. And it's either building to that psychological safety or it's taking away from it.
One of my favorite books, The Prophet, where Khalil Gibran says between what is said and not meant, and what is meant but not said is where most love is lost. You were just walking by trying to get to your next class and your phone battery's dead and you're engrossed in that. And I don't get the warm reception that I normally get. And then I suddenly interpret that as Jeff hates me. And, the stories we make up, as Brene Brown would say, in our heads are deadly to our well-being. Now, they keep us alive in a evolutionary perspective, because if you don't anticipate the lion in the jungle that could eat you, you are likely to be eaten. But we've taken that a little bit too far to the point where, back to your point on snowflake, I cringed when I first heard that word because I knew that it was going to stick. No pun intended. But I knew it was because we don't want to be soft. We don't want people to be so sensitive that you can't even have a mistake or an innocent, well-meaning comment without it being interpreted. But there is some element of people are leaving jobs because the environment does not feel supportive of not just who I am at my core, but just even being safe to speak up in a meeting. Don't worry so much about your employees who complain to you. Worry about the ones who stop complaining. It's not because they don't care, and it's not because they don't have ideas. It's fear of negative consequence. You're talking about Marshall Goldsmith, that poll he did on LinkedIn.
Last week, Marshall Goldsmith talked about, he did a recent survey that talked about there's a vast majority of people who won't express their opinions when they disagree with upper management. And so he was curious about it and looked at possible reasons. His results, 4 main things popped up. What do you think those 4 things were?
Reasons why people don't speak up to upper management. There's got to be a fear element to that.
Yep. Fear of consequences, by and away, the most significant response. I think 63% of respondents said fear of negative consequences held them back from sharing their opinion with upper management. Isn't that just crazy?
It's mind-boggling. Go back to your example you were bringing up earlier of the leader who says, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. McGregor talked years and years ago about theory X management versus theory Y, where theory X is a belief that people are inherently lazy and will do the least amount of work, and they'll lie, cheat, and steal if you don't constantly micromanage them. That's theory X. Theory Y is that people are inherently good and gracious and will try their best. You just need to give them the tools they need to succeed, a clear vision, and then get out of their way. And we all would love to say, I believe in people, but our own fear as leaders, we end up micromanaging, not because we want to make people miserable, although I wonder sometimes if there's an element to that in some cases, but because we are afraid that the widget isn't going to get made correctly, somebody isn't doing their job. So we find ourselves in these monitoring or micromanaging behaviors that kick off a domino series of distrust. And pretty soon, nobody's saying anything to disagree in a meeting, and they all become that silent yes party that really benefits no one.
Yeah. I worked construction for 2 summers for one of my best friends growing up. His father was a foreman for a masonry company. And so my buddy and I were laborers, carried block around, built scaffolding. And his dad used to tell me, I hired you from the neck down. I don't need your opinions. And as a
Jeff,
back of a pickup truck riding, garden hose drinking, jumping things on a bicycle without a helmet 80s kid, I was like, fine, whatever. I'll take whatever you can dish out. And then one day something wasn't done right. And he's like, why didn't you say something? I was like, I was hired from the neck down. I still will remember the look on his face, and it's hired from the neck down.
Oh, that's such a stark example.
Yeah, that leads into what the next response is. 30% of people don't share because they don't think it'll matter anyway. So, hey, you've hired me from the neck down. You have sent the signal that my opinion and my voice is not valued nor welcomed. So why the heck would I speak up and waste my time? Or the other thing he would say is, you might want to save that breath. You may need it on your deathbed. Okay, so I'm going to save it. You got it.
Not every manager has such a stark and direct, I don't want to hear you message, but a lot of us unintentionally, again, with those accidental diminishers, subtly communicate messages like, don't be difficult, don't slow us down, don't challenge momentum, the messenger never gets promoted. So how do you fix this? The leader needs a strong enough ego to be able to hear when they're wrong or when they're missing something important. And the employee needs a strong enough ego or risk-taking willingness. Like, somebody's got to give if we're going to meet in the middle to create psychological safety. How do you do that on teams that you lead?
Skill that I learned way too late. And I credit a retired naval officer by the name of David Marquette. He wrote the book, Turn the Ship Around, and he referred to it as his leader theory, but he talked about you could be an organization of 300 people with one person making the decision, or you could be an organization of 300 people where 300 people are empowered to share their expertise and their brilliance to make the decision. And it really goes down to one question: what do you recommend?
Mm.
Or some derivation of that. And when I started to do that, what do you recommend? Because I thought about it, and the book was great. There's a wonderful YouTube video on it that summarizes it with a cool infographic in 5 minutes. But I thought about the people that I worked for, that I felt most energized working for, and those were the people who made me feel like I had a voice, a seat at the table, and that my perspective was welcomed. And so then I found that what do you recommend was a way for me as a DISC DC, a problem solver, a doer, right? We've talked about it before. I run around all day looking for boxes to check, things I can solve. I'm just going to pour some of my fix it on it, right? I got it. But the people who worked for me, I needed to begin to grow them. Young officers who worked for me when I was a chief engineer, one day they were going to be in my seat. So what was I doing to cultivate their perspective, to cultivate their voice? And oh, by the way, they were neck deep in their subject matter, and I was only able to be that deep in their subject matter. So why would I give up that depth of experience by ignoring them? So I had to cultivate their voice. I had to create a venue for their voice. Part of that was by me moderating my voice, sending a signal: you owe me a perspective. I want your perspective. What do you recommend is like one of my top 5 favorite questions to teach leaders. That if that's not in your toolkit right now, what do you recommend? It needs to be in there.
I'm adding that immediately to my toolkit. And you reminded me just now of the moment I knew I could trust you. We were in a meeting and there was a controversial subject being discussed. And I asked for opinion, and you said firmly but kindly, do I have decision authority or recommendation authority? Yeah, do I have a voice or a vote? Because that will determine how I answer your question, Susan. And it stopped me in my tracks like, wow, this is so cool. Everybody in this room needs to know that ultimately I'm accountable for making this decision, but I want your input. That happened to be the case that day. But there were many times when the 300 versus one person making a decision, you have a vote in this, and I'm not going to move forward without ensuring that we have opinions. A leader in any given moment has to be aware when decisions are made of whether their team members have a voice or a vote, recommendation authority or decision-making authority, and being able to communicate transparently where the person they're talking with stands. Once you asked that question, it was answered. You went right into what your opinion was. It happened to be a recommendation opinion. I happened to think it was a brilliant idea and went forward with it. But had I not felt that what you were putting forward met the moment needed, I was responsible for making a different decision. And I was upfront with you about that. And I felt a certain level of connectedness to say, okay, she's going to tell me. I hope this came. I don't know if it landed. I don't know if you remember this conversation, but it was such a powerful moment for me. It was an educational moment for me as a leader, and it made my respect for you go way up.
Well, I appreciate that. That's something I learned the hard way, and I really have come to appreciate. Like, people will feel frustrated and disenfranchised when they give good guidance or advice, and I'm giving air quotes, like advice, or they give the answer, and then if they feel it was discounted. So when you can contextualize how you're going to use their voice or what they convey to you, right? Am I taking input or am I looking for consensus? Am I going to take all your data points and put them in a basket and go somewhere else and do something with it? That's much different than, Susan, what should we have tonight? Tacos or chicken? And you're like, tacos. And I'm like, great, we're having chicken. You then walk away thinking, the hell'd you ask me for? If you were going to do something else, why'd you ask?
I have a tip that was a game changer similar to this. And it's great for couples therapy as well. Awesome. When your partner comes to you and says, here's a situation, in your head, determine quickly and make sure you ask if you don't have clarity. Does this person want me to just hear them? Does this person want me to help them, like get involved in some way? Or does this person want me to handle it, muscle in there and stand up for them? It's a very different conversation if I just want to be heard versus, hey, can you help me figure out, versus Jimmy down the street just stepped on my bike and go handle this. Do you want me to hear you? Do you want me to help you? Or do you want me to handle it? Has a very different approach. Learn to have that transparent, surfaced conversation, and you'll get out of a lot of doghouse time.
That is a great tool to use, and it speaks to 4 of the last 8% that was surveyed was they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to express their opinion if someone may disagree with it. They're afraid of stepping on people's toes. So that is a great resource to do. And the other one I think is important, and it speaks to peer leadership, is people want to be a team player. I've seen this on great teams where whoever's leading the meeting or the boss is having a conversation and asks for recommendations or input, and we know the person who's being asked doesn't have the right answer, and I don't want to throw my buddy under the bus.
Wanting to be a team player.
So I'm going to just be quiet because either A, I want to be a team player and not throw them under the bus. Maybe I'm not going to say or share my opinion because I'm trying to create space for other people to speak up, which that's very kind. It could be very kind. It might be condescending depending upon why you're doing it. I don't want to be the only one who answers. I've done that before. I feel like I'm the only one who ever talks, or no, I don't want to fill the space. But at the same time, then, does that support your boss? Does your silence waiting not help them and facilitate them? Misplaced or misinterpreted team attributes are a reason too why people fall short.
People don't speak up to senior leaders because they don't know how, or people don't speak up to senior leaders because wanting to protect the team. For people who don't know how to speak up, they aren't sure. There's an interesting generational phenomenon very much played out in my own family. We call a certain age group the greatest generation, silent generation, the group born before the boomers. The greatest generation believes, and this is a gross overgeneralization, I realize not everyone believes this, but by and large, the zeitgeist or the spirit of the times was you don't question the doctor. They call it white coat syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so my father, who is a member of the greatest generation, we were in a doctor's office, and clearly the advice that the doctor was giving was wrong. It was not good for my brother. He had allergy to this medication already. And I remember looking at my dad as a little kid, like, say something, do something. You're a world-renowned scientist. Like, you have a voice here, say something. I'm an 8-year-old, I'm a kid. And he didn't say anything. And so we left. And thankfully, as soon as my mom got wind that this was the prescription, she's like, oh, no, we're not giving our son that medicine. But I remember asking my dad, why didn't you say something? You know that's not the right thing. You're a very confident person. And he said, look, it's not my area of expertise. To your point earlier about people on the ground have much more depth of knowledge, often than we do as a leader, listen to people. But also sometimes people know that something is patently wrong, but they might freeze because a belief in authority bestowed upon the person in the white jacket. It's a fascinating concept to me. Now you fast forward to Generation Alpha and Generation Z, where I can't work for a company whose moral values I don't believe in. It's a very different zeitgeist. However, are people equipped to know what to do when they speak up, or are they able to figure out a way to speak up without harming their buddy? These are real reasons why people are afraid to speak up. So we've got to help them, Jeff.
So I think about it and framing it in 2 ways. The first one I refer to is yes and. A lot of times folks will feel when they're in a leadership position that what they get back, they will interpret as pushback or as a diminishment of their credibility if their constituents offer a perspective different than their own. To our point before, are you looking for input or are you looking for consensus? Is this right? Check my math is different than what do we think we should do? When you answer in a yes and, or you offer things in a yes and, as opposed to a yes but perspective, Oh, yes, Susan, that's a really good point you made. And perhaps we should also consider this makes your efforts additive as opposed to detracting from what the boss may be trying to do, right? That old adage, never appear smarter than your boss. I
Mm,
think that was in 48 Laws of Power.
hmm
That's a way I think that's an easy way to help build some of that, or to not speak up for your friend. Hey, I want to build on the thing that Joe was telling me 2 days ago. I haven't thrown him under the bus. I'm bringing him along with me. Those are two really good ways to build it. I've offered the before. What do you recommend? And I'll offer one more before I turn the how you build it over to you. From my perspective, I see which invites and allows for a different view to take place without somebody's credibility feeling threatened. Because I truly believe the coin of the realm in leadership is credibility. And
mm.
where psychological safety falls apart is when somebody is overly asserting their credibility or they are insecure in their credibility. They then are not comfortable creating a forum for people to speak.
Grateful for that tip about yes and the yes part doesn't mean I necessarily agree with you. It's yes, you've offered an opinion. And one of my favorite lines is, may I offer an additional perspective?
Ooh,
What
I
I'm
like that.
saying is not your idea is stupid, although I might not agree with the idea, but it's basically saying, I'm acknowledging you. That's all we want. We want to be seen. We want to be acknowledged. We don't have to be agreed with. We don't have to be loved. We don't have to be admired. All those things are nice. At the bottom of the story of our what we are seeking and longing for as humans is to be seen and heard. So I heard you, and may I offer an additional perspective. And if people know and they trust at a fundamental level that you are doing something for the betterment either of the organization or even to help me, hey, you got spinach in your teeth, let's get you fixed up, that trust will build over time. It's really hard to afford that trust. There's a proverb, one of my favorites, Proverbs 27:6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Mm.
What that means is if someone is willing to tell you the truth, they may actually care about you more than the person protecting your comfort. Another way to put that proverb is avoiding difficult conversation is making an active investment in long-term dysfunction.
Yeah. My friend Frank likes to tell me conversations delayed are conflicts magnified.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's a
and
hard one to look away from.
yeah, we're all guilty of it. And I think about this when we approach situations with skepticism. To your point before about different perspectives, you are essentially taking a defensive posture. Your hands are up, you're
Mm-hmm.
protecting yourself. Whereas when you offer with curiosity and grace, your palms are up, you're willing to receive. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. We have one priest in a parish of, let's say, 3,000 people. Father so and so was very like quick with me the other day. Wow, why do you think that was? Well, there was a lot of other people walking out of the church and he was trying to say hello to all of them. I was like, so was it he was quick with you or he's trying to service the whole parish, right? Like, what is your perspective? And are you giving people grace? The lack of curiosity, an abundance of skepticism, being judgmental and not offering grace is a great way to kill psychological safety because you
Ah,
start making judgment assessments instead of looking for possible alternatives or opportunities.
like you say often, the most generous interpretation, if we can offer the most generous interpretation. The reason I brought Rich Davini into my previous organization, not once or twice, but 3 times to talk to our senior leaders, was the concept of anti-fragility.
Mm.
It takes a strong sense of confidence, a secure ego to experience honesty from another. Insecure leadership often experiences honesty as betrayal. What do you mean that didn't sound well? I took one of my best friends with me wedding dress shopping in 1994. And I remember I would come out of the room and I would be like, this is the one. And she goes, you look like a wicked city woman. Go back in there. But I love this one. And I knew that the moment I got the right one, and we both cried the moment I had the right one, because that was the one. But somebody who's willing to tell you that you look like a wicked city woman in that moment, it's the wounds of a friend, the preciousness of someone who's looking out for your best interest. And again, those very real consequences. The Space Shuttle Challenger, don't speak up. Those concerns about the O-rings in cold temperatures before the launch, the concerns were raised. Warnings existed, but the punishment, we are always watching. When someone speaks up, we're watching for what happens. So, dear leader, remember this: when someone tells you you're wrong, even if you know you're right, find a way to embrace the courage that it took for the person to speak up. Even if you override or you move forward differently, you are teaching people in any given moment how to treat you. So the yes and response can come from the leader to say, okay, I hear you, and we're going to go in this direction, but let's not forget what so-and-so just said, because it matters. In this instance, I have to go for the greater good of direction X. People will follow you, even if they don't like your decision, if they know that you're willing to entertain different views and that your ego isn't so fragile. As Colin Powell would say, never let your ego be so close to your position that if your position falls, your ego goes with it. I live by that. My ego is not subject to the opinions of others. And that's a really hard thing to do, because we care about what other people think, especially people pleasers. Yeah. But my confidence in myself must be architected and CEO'd by myself. Otherwise, I'm putting too much power in other people's hands at any given moment.
What a great tip and insight. And thank you for that. So let's pivot and go to our listener question this week from a listener in Kansas City, Missouri. Not Kansas City, Kansas, but Kansas City, Missouri.
Let's do it.
My boss likes to ask for our input, then tell us how our input is wrong or how we're failing them, and then going on to publicly belittling those who speak up. How do I stay true to my value of wanting to share my perspective without angering my boss or walking away feeling like I'm doing something wrong?
How many times have we experienced that, where we say to ourselves, you really don't want my opinion, do you?
Yeah.
Wow. What do you do in a circumstance like that?
I'm a glutton for punishment, so I constantly am speaking up, and I'm like, here it comes. I know it's going to hurt, but I think that that's a decision you have to make. What's going to hurt worse? The reprimand or the regret of walking away feeling like you should have done more to speak up about the O-ring? Where is the greater risk, to your ego or to the safety, success, and well-being in others? And so knowing your values and staying true to your values is the stepping off point. That's not to say that you should always speak up. Consider your venue. Maybe that meeting isn't the time to speak up, but then you double back to your boss later. Hey, I should have said something in there, but I wanted to bring up this thought for you to consider, or from my perspective, this was here. And I just kind of wanted to get where you stood on it, right? Offer a less threatening. Leaders who don't do this well or who destroy psychological safety, almost always it's coming from their lack of fill in the blank, whatever it is, lack of confidence, lack of understanding, lack of their own security because they're getting dumped on by their boss. And right, you don't hear about this stuff rolling uphill. It's always downhill, right? So it's their lack of. And so how do you give them a graceful out while still protecting the organization? And I think that's what I try to do. I either I'm going to take it on the chin because it's worth it. I won't feel like I feel like there's an obligation, or I find a graceful way to go back to that person and offer them a yes and. Hey, maybe I should have done this here, but I still think it's important. I really would be remiss if I didn't. And because I care about you, here's mine. Because I care about you, or I care about our organization, I really want to offer this. It makes it not about challenging them, but about supporting and being helpful. The art of the possible.
You're funny in meetings. It's so inspiring when you're like, I know that I'm going to be that guy right now and say the thing. And I noticed that people don't get bristly when you do that at all. It's like, good, Jeff is going to say the thing that needs to be said. A leadership impact that you've had on others that we know, I watched when you said, I wish I wasn't the only guy always, I wish I wasn't the only one always saying the hard thing, but I'm still going to say it. Well, I noticed a couple people starting to take risks after that. Like, I'm not going to leave. So back to the wanting to be a team player. Sometimes being a team player is speaking up and not letting Jeff be, just because Jeff has DC and is confident in conflict. Don't leave him out there and speak up. So you have a couple S's and I's taking risks out there. That's leadership impact. Carl Jung, my favorite psychologist, said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Ooh. So if we can say that I'm going to choose courage over comfort, it's a muscle we have to practice, because comfort is by far the default that all living beings are wired to be safe. Even if they go into fight, flight, or freeze, we're doing all of those things so that we can be safe. But a psychologically safe leader, an anti-fragile leader, and a leader who has room in their heart for other people's voice, knows that disagreement is not disrespect. So when you say to me, I'm going to be that guy, I'm going to say something, my brain is now wired to go, you know what? Jeff is going to help us see a perspective that we haven't yet seen. Think about the movie 12 Angry Men, where one of the jurors says quietly, I just think we owe him a few words. One of the greatest movie lines in history, because what it says is that one person willing to disrupt false consensus can change the entire outcome. Be bold, be brave, be kind, not nice. Kind is speaking up a truth that might not be comfortable. Nice is telling you what you want to hear. I don't want to be nice. I want to be kind.
So leaders, as you leave today, I want to give you a quick takeaway, okay? Psychological safety is gained in inches and lost in miles, but it can be repaired just like your favorite piece of pottery with honest dialogue and consistent effort. If you ask the question, listen. If it's your value, stay true to speaking up, and don't let somebody else's shortcoming diminish your perception of your own value. And leaders, recognize leadership is a full contact sport 24 hours a day. You're sending signals about psychological safety all the time. Be mindful and be intentional.
And thank you for creating this psychologically safe hour for us to get together with the folks out there who are all trying to do their best to make great things happen. Psychological safety, we can be part of a solution by letting go of our ego long enough to go palms up.
Not just for snowflakes. Have a wonderful day.
I might get a flake of snow. Thank you for your time, Jeff. This was delightful. I am Susan Hendrich.
I'm Jeff Servello. Did we mess that up really bad? Where are we going with that? Was that not the ending?
I don't know what the...
Totally. I don't know what you're doing. You're like, I'm Susan Hendrich. I'm like, where are we going? We're closing
Where did
the
that
show?
even come from?
Oh, psychological safety. Suck it up, buttercup.